Hello, everyone. I am finally back. Oh, shoot. All right, sorry about the mishap, but hello, everyone. I am back once again, this time with another review, continuing my Jurassic marathon and my Jurassic Road to Dominion rebirth stuff. Here we have the Hammond collection, Allosaurus and Carnotaurus from Fallen Kingdom and Dominion, respectively. So, here we are. Here they are, actually. Now, I will show the boxes on screen right here because I have put the boxes into storage, I believe. And, yeah, they're really the same thing. I will say the Hammond collection boxes have kind of remained the same for quite some time. So, nothing really to say here other than they're the medium-sized carnivores. And, yeah, that's all I got to really say about the boxes. Now, of course, I would usually... Now, in terms of, like, the big little stories here, I'm going to keep it really brief because I'll admit my videos are getting a little bit long. Unnecessarily long, in my opinion, in some regard. But I will make it a little bit brief. I mean, I've really been wanting these guys for quite some time. I got the Carnotaurus during, I think, Amazon's Prime Day sales, I believe. I got them, I think, for like, I don't know, $40, I believe. And I don't know, I can't really remember. But I got him alongside Haya Kong from Kong Skull Island and Asuko and Doug. But those don't really matter. I'll just probably show a picture on screen if I do have it. And then this Allosaurus here, I mainly got during when I was in Orlando, and I really wanted him, and he has been probably the one dino I get from the shelf, from my Hammond collection shelf, because he's just so much fun to pose. Now, of course, the main question is, are these two really worth getting? If you want me to be honest, which hopefully I am, that's me. Goodness, sorry, but I really think that these are worth it, especially this guy. Probably, and he definitely should have been in my top 10. But let's start off with the painting and the sculpting of these guys, and then we'll go from there. Now, before I move on, of course, if you notice, I have a bit of black specks on my hands. And if you do notice that, that is because I did a lot of spray painting. So just don't mind it. But anyways, back onto the view. Let's start off with the painting and the sculpting details of this Carnotaurus. All right. Let's get this out of the way because I want to really glaze what this figure is. The painting and the sculpting on this guy is magnificent. And it really shows that Mattel is indeed upgrading from their original figures. Now, if you remember back with my Ceratosaurus review, well, my triple review on most of the Hammond collection figures, they had very blunted sort of rows of teeth. They didn't really look very sharp enough. With this Carnotaurus here, you can clearly see the teeth are a lot sharper looking. Yeah, they're still kind of blunt, but they actually look a lot more like teeth than the Ceratosaurus or the Baryonyx, where they just look like giant, massive globs of plastic. And it even shows here in this mouth. Look at that. The texture as well is still present like most Hammond collection figures, as shown right here. And one thing too, I really love the sculpt work on just this overall head. The details, and you can even see they adopted something that the T-Rex that the T-Rex had, which was the glass eye effect. Now, it's completely debatable if you think this is really good. I mean, like, in certain lighting, especially if I put him in the front, it looks like the Carno is kind of soulless. But then if you get, like, shine a light on it, it's like you can really kind of see the iris and the pupils. And it's like, yeah, it looks pretty cool, but honestly, it would have been better if it was just a little bit painted or printed on, to be honest. But overall, I really love the painting on this. I love the stripe pattern and the details a lot. It's just so nice, and it fixes every single issue with the other ones. Honestly, it kind of feels like it doesn't really need a wash to kind of highlight the details. Maybe some parts down here, but not so much here. And of course, I love the white shading and painting they did on the underbelly. Although I don't know why the bottom of the tail isn't painted. I could be wrong, and it could actually not be like that in the movie. But yeah, from what I understand, these are actually probably based... This is probably the most... Would you argue this is the most accurate? Probably. Because, yeah, this feels more like an actual CGI model brought to life as an actual action figure. And overall, it looks amazing. I love, just again, the painting and that sculpting. And the detail is awesome. It really does feel very much like an upgrade. And it also shows by these feet. Now, if you remember the Hammond collection T-Rex, which I will do a review on her. If you remember, the feet on her are very unnecessarily big. What this figure has that is a big upgrade is that the feet are small enough to the point it can not only hold the figure, but it looks also very proportionate. And yeah, I very much prefer that over the giant clown feet. On some of the figures it works, but then over time, because like let's say the Baryonyx, it's okay, but then the Dilophosaurus, which at first I was like okay with it, but then over time I was like, not really. And then same with the Ceratosaurus and Barry, they're okay, but the T-Rex, so that's the worst case of the giant clown shoes. That and the Velociraptor. This is a lot better. But yeah, overall, I really like this. Again, my only gripes being maybe a wash. But I think in terms of sculpt gripes, I don't understand these little arms here. I feel like they're really a little too big, and they more or less come off as baby arms. And I also don't understand why they're not painted. I really don't get it. If the toenails are painted, why aren't those painted? Same with the dew claw. And yeah, these just look like giant baby arms rather than like actual arms. And yeah, these are just like one solid piece and they weren't articulated. That would have been a little bit better, to be honest with you. But overall, I mean, I really love the detail of this guy. It's awesome. So, yeah, that's all I got to say with this guy. Now let's move on to probably my favorite of the big, medium-sized dinos, the Allosaurus. While I mainly like this figure due to the articulation, I still think the painting and the sculpting is amazingly well done here. But mostly the sculpting. Painting-wise, it's a bit of a step down, and it actually more or less reminds me of the little strike and roar Allosaurus I'll put on screen right here. That's what it kind of reminds me of. I wish there was at least somewhat of a wash to highlight some of the details, but I will go over one flaw that this figure has, and that's just the arms. Now, of course, the neck is very nicely well done. I love the subtle dry brushing of like this sandy color here. It just looks very awesome. And yeah, of course, he has another glass eye. There's this, if you can also see on camera, there's also a smidge bit of red right there too. And that's really nice. But one thing I want to mention too is look at those teeth. This is what I mean when it comes to, you can still make the teeth very rubbery, as you see right here, but still sculpt them to look like they're sharp and jagged and actually look like teeth. And there we go. There's a sculpt on the tongue. Very nicely well done. But just, yeah, look at those teeth. It's very nicely sculpted. Overall, the texture and the look is really well done. Although, I do feel this neck is a bit weird. The transitioning here from this sandy blue to this darkish blue here is a bit weird. And I think that's my main issue is the skin pattern of this guy or gal. Again, sorry if I mispronounce the genders of these dinos. Is very confusing, and the whole skin pattern is just a bit weird because if we're gonna get into QC issues. Oh, if you remember, a lot of Allosaurus copies have this side of the whole figure just completely unpainted. And it really does look like an eyesore. Now, unfortunately, my copy was fine on this side, but once we move to the other side, See what I mean? There's just so much, there's a lot of this sandy color, but not a lot of blue, which is a bit of a bummer. And yeah, if they just fixed that, that would have solved a little bit of the paint problems. Besides, of course, my usual, wish you had a wash. One thing I really love, though, is just the sculpt work. I love the details. And I feel like with a wash, you could highlight a lot of the scars and scratches that this dino had in the movie. I feel like this one is a very older dino. And one thing I really like, too, is that the nails are painted, unlike the original toy, the Strike and Roar thingy. And then, of course, the toenails are painted. I think they're more of a blackish brown color. So there's that. And, of course, paint consistency on the bottom. But overall, the detailing, while a bit of a step down compared to, of course, that Carnotaurus, I just really love the sculpt work. I love the spikes here. I love the fact that this is a brand new mold. That's all I gotta say. It's a very nice mold, and I love this tail. Although I wish there was a little bit more paint on the tip, up until the tip. And I wish there was a little bit more paint here, because it makes it look really ugly whenever you move it. But yeah, overall, I really like this Allosaurus in terms of the sculpt work. Painting, of course, as I mentioned before, it could have been a little bit better. But overall, it's nice. Now let's move on to the articulation. And this is where I say this is probably my favorite so far of the Hammond dinos besides the Giga. Articulation for the both of them is practically the same. No accessories here because, well, these guys don't come with accessories. But articulation, again, is the same. Just with minor differences. So, the neck joint is the same as on both figures. There's a ball joint at the head. They could look up this far and look down this far, but with the added neck, they could go up this far and go down this far, and they can look from side to side. And of course, with the Carnotaurus, the jaws are not on separate pieces. They are one whole piece, so they open like this. You can have them like this, you can have them like this, you can have them like this. At least it's not like the T-Rex, where it's like kind of somewhat ratchety here. You can just change it as you will. Now, of course, moving on to the arms. Of course, because this is the Carnotaurus, not too much articulation at the arms. He can swivel all the way around. And there is a hinge to go out, in. And there is a hinge for the bicep and a swivel there. But no wrist swivel because of just how small his arms are. Which kind of proves my point. Why does he have articulation for these if they're kind of pointless? Ball joints sort of at the leg. They can kick up about this far, can kick back about this far, and can rotate all the way around. Bit of a decent spread. A hinge at the knee with a swivel there too. A hinge at the calf, I'm assuming, that also has a swivel there as well. And a hinge at the ankle, which could hinge and pivot. And yes, this can hold a pose like that. You can do that with the smaller feet. You just need to balance it, per se. And then, of course, you have a ball jointed tail with a bit of a bendy wire. So a ball joint here, a ball joint here, and then a bendy wire. But this is kind of weak, to be honest. This is my least favorite part about the figures. Just this bendy wire tail. Feels very stiff. Now, compare this to the Allosaurus, on the other hand. And this guy is amazing. Same articulation as before, as the Carno, but, of course, other differences. The neck, the jaw, the mouth here is separate. So you can have the Allosaurus like this, you could have the Allosaurus like this, or you could have the Allosaurus like this. But you can't really like keep it like, oh, well, you can, but it'll take a little bit of finagling. But of course, it's going to eventually do that. The neck also feels less fragile. This one, if this, like the ball joint here, you can do this. and it just feels more natural. Of course, as mentioned before, the arms are very different. Same articulation as the regular Ceratosaurus, doing bicep swivel and a hinge, but of course, hinge jointed wrists. And then, of course, same articulation as the Ceratosaurus on the legs, and the tail, instead of two separate ball jointed parts, it's just a ginormous bendy wire, which honestly, besides it kind of creasing here, it won't leave too much of a mark, unlike Hot Toys figures. And yeah, look at this. Or this. Like, the posability on this Allosaurus here is just amazing. And this is what I mean on why I glazed this one the most. Because look at this posing. And if you've seen one of my videos, go check out my stop motion video to show you what I mean. Like, just the articulation is so much fun that it's probably it's just impossible for me to, like, put it down. It's just that good. But that's not to undermine the Carno. The Carno still has some very good articulation, and hell, you can still do this. Even with a smaller foot. But, like, come on. You're not gonna get that. You're not gonna get something like this. This one is just a lot better in terms of articulation. But this one is also really good too. So yeah, articulation, they're both the same. Although I do enjoy the Allosaurus a little bit more. Carno is awesome. So you can still get into some pretty cool poses. But I still prefer the Allosaurus. But they're both good. So anyways, let's move on to these size comparisons. Now, unfortunately, I do not have my ruler with me, and I cannot find it for the love of me. I bet as soon as I'm done recording, it will probably just show up randomly out of nowhere. But you know, I'm just gonna kind of assume and estimate that these guys are maybe about like 8 inches, 7 to 8 inches tall, and maybe about like, well, at least Carno's probably at minimum maybe like almost like 12 inches, I'd say. So yeah, probably like maybe 12 to 13 inches. Allosaurus maybe 15. I know I should be a lot better at this, but I do not have the ruler with me. But if you really do want to see a comparison between the Carnotaurus and the other dinos I have, there is a short for that on my channel as well. I don't have one for the Allosaurus, but of course, as for comparison, for the little comparison here is the Carnotaurus and the Allosaurus compared to the Baryonyx and the T-Rex. As you can clearly see, they exist in this medium to large scale, which is what I think really people wanted. And yeah, I'm glad that they decided to do this. It's not always going to be the same thing. And hopefully this opens the door for like something like an Indoraptor or something like that. That would be really cool. But anyways, for the final comparison. Here they are compared to your 1/12 scale figure. We have the Marvel Legends Captain America from Civil War. I don't have Zombie Cap currently. He's on my shelf, but yeah, there he is. So let's move on to my final thoughts. Bit of an awkward angle here, but overall, my final thoughts on these guys is I honestly really like them, and they're probably some of my favorites in the entire line and the ones I own so far. Hell, I actually prefer these over, let's say, like the Baryonyx and the other smaller dinos. These guys are just awesome. They're fun to pose, and they really show how Mattel is actually improving in terms of their line. They're, as what Marco Meg said, they're one of the very few. It's kind of rare seeing a large corporation actually listen to fan criticism. And it's nice to see Mattel is doing that with their Hammond collection line, like making the feet smaller, making the teeth look more like actual teeth and less like blunt teeth, like what this Barry is. And overall, they really do feel like improvements. Now, of course, if I had to pick one, I would honestly prefer the Allosaurus. It's just a lot of fun. But the Carnotaurus, if you're a big fan of the Carno, even that too, it's a very cool figure. But just in general, they're awesome. They scale well with your T-Rexes, or they scale well with Marvel Legends, depending on how you want to set them up. And overall, they just are awesome. I really love these two so much, and honestly, I have to give them both an 8.5 out of 10. Although I would say the Allosaurus is a slight 9 out of 10 because I enjoy it a lot more. Hell, that Allosaurus is like probably a lot more fun to pose than the Giga. So yeah, that's all I gotta really say. Very, very, very quick review. I'm trying to get this ball rolling so I can actually get to watching most of the Jurassic stuff, and also get to film the rest of the other reviews. But overall, that's my review. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, and I will see you all next time with my review on the T-Rex, and then I will do my review on the Giga and Theory, and then the last is probably going to be a review on Jurassic World Dominion. So until then, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.